How often do we find ourselves dealing with anger, grudge, or resentment? And how often do we find ourselves, after getting angry, realizing that anger does not help solve problems, but only creates confusion and instability in our lives? Today we turn to the words of a great Zen master who takes up the plea for help from a very quarrelsome young man who has decided that he wants to manage his anger toward everyone in the world and be able to live a life in peace and harmony and be happy. If you are enjoying this video and want to support this channel, I invite you to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share this beautiful story with your friends. And if you want to share your thoughts with us, you can leave a comment below and tell us your experience. And now to our story. In a small coastal village, enveloped by sea breezes and surrounded by green hills, lived a man named Lin. Lin was known throughout the village for his short temper and his propensity to quarrel with anyone who crossed his path. All it took was a small disagreement or slight provocation to make him explode in anger, and often the arguments would erupt into actual fights. One day, exhausted by his own anger and eager to find a solution to his inner torment, Lin decided to go to the temple where a wise Zen master named Satori resided. He hoped that the master could offer him wisdom and advice to appease his anger and find inner peace. When Lin arrived at the temple, Master Satori greeted him kindly and invited him to sit in front of him. Lin expounded his problem to the master, describing how tormented he was by his anger and his propensity to quarrel. Satori listened carefully, then smiled and said, "Lin, I have 5 valuable Buddhist tips that might help you overcome your anger and live in harmony with yourself and others. For each piece of advice, look for a situation, place, or challenge where you can test yourself. When you feel ready, we will move on to the next counsel, strengthened by the experience and practice you will have accumulated. Are you ready?" Lin, with confidence and enthusiasm, replied, "I am ready, Master. Free me from this unbearable burden, please." First tip: kindness and compassion. Master Satori explained to Lin that one of the fundamental principles of Buddhism is the practice of kindness and compassion. This means not only being kind and compassionate toward others, but also toward oneself. Lin was to learn to see the world through the eyes of others and to understand their suffering and difficulties. The master told Lin an ancient story in which the Buddha himself demonstrated the power of kindness and compassion. One day, while the Buddha was walking in a village, he was approached by an angry and aggressive man who insulted him heavily. Instead of reacting with anger or resentment, the Buddha looked at him with eyes full of compassion and responded with kindness. He asked the man why he was so angry and what he could do to help him. The man, taken aback by the Buddha's unexpected reaction, calmed down and began to tell him about his problems. The Buddha listened to him with compassion and offered wise advice to help him overcome his difficulties. Lin realized that kindness and compassion could not only appease the anger of others, but also transform his own. He decided to put this teaching into practice in his daily life. She began to be kinder to her neighbors, to listen to their concerns and to offer her help when needed. He found that even the most angry and hostile people were appeased by his kindness and compassion, and that this brought peace and harmony to his life and the community in which he lived. Second tip: breath awareness. Master Satori then guided Lin toward the practice of breath awareness, a central concept in Buddhism. Lin learned that breath awareness consisted of carefully focusing on one's breath, observing it as it entered and left the body without judgment or interference. This practice had the power to calm the mind and bring Lin into the present moment, freeing him from the bondage of negative thoughts and emotions, including anger. The master told Lin about a Buddhist monk who, at a time of great emotional turmoil, sat in meditation and began to focus on his breath. At first, his mind was filled with chaotic and disturbing thoughts, but slowly, through constant practice, he was able to reconnect with the regular rhythm of the breath. With each deep breath, he felt his anger and tension melt away, making way for calm and inner clarity. Lin made a commitment to practice breath awareness every day. He found a quiet place in his village near the sea, where he could sit quietly and focus on his breath. Even in times of stress and irritation, Lin resorted to the practice of breath awareness to find calm and inner peace. Over time, this practice became a safe haven for Lin, a way to get rid of anger and find peace in the stillness of the breath. Third tip, the practice of forgiveness. Master Satori then decided to teach Lin the importance of forgiveness as a means of getting rid of anger and suffering. Lin learned that the Buddha taught that holding grudges and resentment only fed one's inner suffering, preventing one from living fully and at peace with oneself and others. The master shared a story with Lin that illustrated the transformative power of forgiveness. He told of an elderly monk who, many years earlier, had suffered a terrible injustice at the hands of another monk in his own monastery. This monk had spread false accusations against him, causing him great pain and shame. Initially, the elderly monk felt anger and a desire for revenge, but in time he realized that resentment would not bring him peace. He therefore decided to forgive his attacker and let go of his pain. This act of compassion not only brought peace to the elderly monk, but also changed the heart of the other monk, who repented of his actions and asked for forgiveness. Lin reflected on this story and understood that forgiveness did not mean justifying the wrong actions of others, but freeing oneself from the burden of resentment and anger. He decided to practice forgiveness in his daily life, starting with small acts of compassion and indulgence toward those who had hurt him. In time, Lin found peace in letting go of the past and opening himself to a future of harmony and serenity. Fourth tip, wisdom in listening. The master, seeing that Lin was making excellent progress, guided him toward understanding the importance of active listening and wisdom in communicating with others. Often, anger arises from a lack of understanding and communication. Lin learned that in order to manage his anger wisely, he needed to develop the ability to listen with empathy and respect, rather than react impulsively to the words and actions of others. The master shared a story with Lin that illustrated the importance of empathic listening. He told of a Buddhist monk who lived in an isolated temple far from the outside world. One day, an angry traveler knocked on the temple door and began yelling at the monk, accusing him of being selfish and insensitive to the suffering of others. Instead of defending himself or reacting in anger, the monk listened carefully to the traveler's words, trying to understand the root of his frustration. With patience and wisdom, the monk was able to calm him down and turn his anger into compassion. Lin reflected on this story and realized that empathic listening was a powerful tool for resolving conflicts and promoting mutual understanding. He decided to put this lesson into practice in his daily life, committing himself to listening carefully to the opinions and feelings of others before responding. He found that this approach not only reduced his own anger, but also created spaces for dialogue and harmony in his relationships with others. Over time, Lin became a master in the art of empathic listening, combining wisdom and compassion to resolve conflicts and promote peace in his village. Fifth tip, the search for inner balance. Master Satori finally guided Lin toward understanding the importance of finding inner balance between mind, body, and spirit. Lin learned that anger often stems from insecurity and lack of inner harmony. To manage his anger effectively, he had to work to establish a balance within himself, nurturing every part of his being equally and harmoniously. The master shared with Lin the story of a Buddhist monk who, despite being engaged in his spiritual practices, neglected his physical and mental well-being. He lived a messy and disordered life, eating little and depriving himself of the sleep he needed to regenerate his body. This imbalance led to his short temper and inability to handle anger. Through the monk's experience, Lin understood the importance of taking care of oneself in a comprehensive and balanced way. He decided to engage in practices that promoted physical well-being, such as yoga, regular exercise, and a healthy, balanced diet. He also devoted time to meditation and inner reflection to cultivate his mental and spiritual health. After receiving these valuable teachings, Lin felt enlightened and ready to embark on a new path to inner peace. He returned to his village with a light heart and a renewed spirit, determined to put Master Satori's teachings into practice. As time passed, Lin became an example of kindness, compassion, and wisdom to everyone in his village. His fights and quarrels became only a distant memory, replaced by serenity and inner peace. He lived happily and in harmony with others, knowing that true strength lies in the ability to transform anger into love and compassion.